Good morning. This video is actually just to go over the JIRA software and different uses for it. Kind of give you an idea of what it can do and what it is not very ideal for. JIRA is a pretty cost-effective solution for a project management system. It doesn't cost a lot of money compared to a lot of the other systems, and with the new improvements, it's fairly flexible. So this is again where we're going to log into JIRA, and I'll actually show you two different accounts. One that is a administrator account, and then one that is actually the kind of like a user or a limited account. So just making sure that I log in correctly, and we will soon see the intro screen. So here's basically the projects interface. I already have created 5 different projects that all start with cubic, that all go through and look at the different types of options you have with the software. So there's classic and then also like modern views of the different systems that they have. So we will mostly just be looking at the modern, more updated templates, because they are just much easier to use. The permissions in there, if you want to assign who can and can't access projects, is much easier. The renaming and navigating of the system is just very, very different than the older version. The older version, which is these I've listed as classic, they have many menus and submenus, and you have to know exactly how to set everything up. The modern version is much more intuitive. So we will first just actually start with creating our own project, going up here in the top. We will talk about the different options over here, but since this is the landing page, it's just best to start with actually creating a project first. So I said we had classic and then more of a modern next gen style. We'll do the next gen, and this will just be demo 2, and put that in, and we're going to keep with this template. We could change it to either the classic, or we could change it to the modern. Let's actually make sure that we actually are on the next gen. Come on. Okay, so everything there looks good. So then we can create, access level. This is with a modern version. You can actually say whether you want it private to only certain people, or if you want it open, and it takes care of a lot of the restrictions for who can view it. With it being open, anyone who I give access to this login will then be able to actually do work on this system, on any of these projects. So here we are on the intro page of the model that I selected, which is the Kanban modern view, next gen view. You'll see terms used about Scrum versus Kanban. Kanban is really like a visual method for viewing projects, and you can see these are actually columns here that say to do, in progress, and done. This is the traditional Kanban view that lets you take different tasks and put them into categories, so you can see not only who is working on it, but you can see where it is in the workflow. And all these can actually even be renamed. So the first thing I like to do is just rename these to match kind of my workflow. So maybe I have a project comes in and I need to have a certain prep phase where I'm getting documentation or scoping it. Maybe then I want to separate out everything based off the the instrument that's being used. Maybe then, instead of going to done yet, I have also analysis. And then maybe after I'm done with analysis, I then have my final step, which is just complete. So now I've kind of set up my structure, and these are all different names than what were there before. And from there, then I can either start creating issues here and filling in, and each issue could be considered like a project. So before we actually start creating these issues, though, we can also look at some of these other main features. Like right here, I do have a roadmap, And you can see this then gives me a calendar type view where then I can actually put in different projects, different tasks, and I can track them based off kind of a historical and linear method. So these groups of different tasks are often called epics. So think of like a storybook. An epic involves a lot of different stories, different tasks, different events that are going on. So I sometimes just like to call this, for the purpose of what we're doing today, maybe just by the week. And so maybe this is for the week of 3:30, and then I could have again a whole set of different tasks that could actually come under this. So there's my task, or my grouping, and I can actually put down different tasks that are different projects underneath here. So maybe I'm getting samples in from this faculty member, maybe I'm getting samples in from another faculty member. And so from here though, for this week, I can actually set over here the start date, and maybe I'm just interested in the beginning of this week and what's going on through the end of the week. So there, once I click out of this, you can see there's my time period. And maybe I will do another epic, and I will just say it's for the week of, I guess the next week would be 4/6. And so now once I click on that, let's say then I have projects for the following week I'm already planning, which I might have something like this. And again, when I click on this, I can set the start dates, and I can also do the due dates. Once I click off of that, then you can see what's going on. These, for the amount of information I put in concerning these epics, these groupings of activities, I don't really put in too much information. I can put in start and end dates so I get a visual here, and then I put in basically my child issues. Most of my data is actually going to be in these individual events. So if I go over here to this event, I can actually add in whether it's what phase it's in, just like we created before. That information that we modified is now shown here. So maybe I'm in the prep, or maybe I'm in the analysis phase for this project, you can see there. And maybe for this project, I'm actually in just the prep stage. I'll leave that the way it is. And then from here, I can put in whatever information that I need. I can assign a user who will be doing the project. And right here is just my generic user. That's not me. That's just my dummy character. And this would be normally a person doing the work in the lab that's assigned to watch and follow through on the project. And then I don't have a huge amount of information down below this. This is a quick view. We can see that up here that it shows that it's inside this grouping of tasks, and this is the task name. The task is given an auto-generated name right here, and it's always going to be whatever this prefix is that I defined on the introduction, and then it goes chronologically by adding 1 to each new issue. But to actually get more details about this, I can actually double click on the actual event. Okay, there I am. It took a moment for it to pop up. So right here then I have that task, which could be a project or a sample that's been received. We can add in information here about what it is, and we can also keep a chronological list of all the different notes that we might have. Over here we can see assignee. We can also assign it labels, and these can be used to search all of our different projects for specific labels. And then again, who is the person who created the initial request. So there's not a whole lot of information over here. So one of the nice things about this setup is that we can actually add in data over here that can not only be searched, but it can just add in all the project information that we would typically want for a project. So I will go over here to project settings, and then we have issue types. So while I'm clicked here on tasks, I can see here's my summary, description, status, and all this information. I can actually go through and add in new information. So I can add in, a start date, or actually we'll say task start date, and then we can also add in another date. We can put in deadline, and we can even put in paragraphs. So maybe we need project description, or actually we'll have description already there. Then we could actually have protocol info, and we could keep on adding in all these different items over here. Maybe we need to have in here up near the top PI name. That's something we might want to search for and also include. So all this information can all be added in to these different areas, and you can kind of move things around. You can do things like that. There's a few limits on what can be moved. I was thinking I could move this up here, but it doesn't seem to be liking that. I think it's only because I'm allowed to have only a certain number up here in this section. But down here you can just keep on adding. So that is very nice. So now we can also do that for subtasks, where we can add in different categories, or even for our epic, we can actually add in dates here also. A lot of times I might remove these and just keep them. Well, no, I'd leave these here because of the form view. So then when we go back, we will see that when we get back to the project, our board, which we already made some additions to, has already been updated with those projects. They all came from this roadmap. When I go and look at these projects, you'll see right here, here's the project, and okay, I just reloaded, took a moment for it to update, but now you can see I have the PI name, start date, deadlines. I have those different values already in here. Same way if I have areas where I can put entire paragraphs. So a lot of the information that you might need to collect for a project can all be included into here, including attachments, and you can even create subtasks inside the individual task if you want to break it down, so that way you know more what's going on. So this is a very versatile system, allows you to add in a lot of information that can be customized, and every one of these categories is searchable. So that is a very helpful task. When we look at the roadmap, it does give us a visual, and again, all we've done is just group these different events all together. And they call these purple ones, these purple icons, epics, and again, it's just a grouping of different tasks that you want to complete during a certain time period. And so then if we go to our board, we will now see that we have our different projects listed on the board itself. If we want to transition these to different phases, we can actually just move them around. And even if we wanted to create different tasks or issues, then we could do that even from right here versus doing it in the roadmap. So each of these can just be updated. Each of these can then be opened up so you can see the different views, and there's all the information. So you can quickly go through and readjust everything as needed. And most of the things automatically save. The only times you have to really save a lot of the things with pressing a button is when you're in this project settings area. But let's say I just want to keep it like this. And so that is one of the key features to all this. The idea is that then you have a visual, and the other side to all this is that you can also, as you go through, right now let's say we assign the user that's going to be doing this, and let's say the label, we can classify any type of label we want. Maybe this is being only used on instrument A. We can make up whatever title that we want for it. We can add in whatever information we need here, and again, attachments. And so, but when we exit out, we will see now that this project right here actually has the user associated with it. There's other information we can add in here that can also be very helpful. Right here, it just kind of tells us the kind of priority level, but this because it tells you what week that you're grouping everything in. The other thing that we can do is we can modify this list over here so it actually shows more information. We did the issue types where we then created different information that we now put in the tasks, and we can do the epics and all that. We can modify how that looks. We can change who has access to this. Only certain people can view it. We can close it and then make it viewable only by these people. We can also add features, which this is sometimes a nice thing. The most popular ones are here at the top. So a backlog is just another way of viewing all those different tasks. And sprints is a Scrum term. It's a way that you can organize when things are done. We'll get to that in just a little bit. But once we have done that, we can actually then go back to the project, and now you all of a sudden you have a backlog. Okay, so now when we go to backlog, we can now have one of our projects is here, and we can actually move it up into the boards so that way it can be seen. This just takes all of our backlogs, so we can create a big list, and that way you don't have to see all these different upcoming projects all on your board. And so that way then you can keep some order to all of it. There's also ways that you can sort this so you only see certain things, and same way with like labels. So you can add all this information in here. Here's one of the labels. So many different things that you can do. So it makes it so that way from a visual perspective it's easy to keep track of everything. One of the other nice things that a lot of systems just don't have is that when you get to this, after you fill in all your information, attach your data, do all that good stuff for documenting the entire project, you can actually go up here and you can actually export it out as a Word document. And when we pull it up, it'll be for this particular project, and then it gives you kind of a summary of everything. If you filled in all the information, this would be more complete. And so that can give you a lot of the information that you need for it, and you can use this as helping you archive things. There's actually an add-in that actually allows you then to also include the different spreadsheets, the attachments that you might have included, and that'll just be a different section down here where you can click and it'll download the actual data that you might have attached to the project. So this is a great way of making sure that everything is backed up, and this can be also customized a fair amount so that way it shows all that extra user added information. So again, one of the nice features that a lot of software does not actually include because they want you to keep on using this, but you could actually back up at the end of the week every project that's been completed along with its data into a system like Box, and then you'd have everything documented there. And in here, if you once you filled in the different categories information over here, you can actually search all the different projects that have been created in all the different project folders. I have, again, 5 folders plus this one. I could actually do a search and find information based off the type of project it is. So very nice for that feature. So that way you can search back, and maybe if each of these has a PI listed, then you can search by the PI's name, and then you just get a list of all their projects that have occurred that you've entered into this system. So that is some of the major aspects of all this. When we look at features, They do have some graphical information down here. I don't use it as much because it's really for more like computer bug tracking type stuff. Uh, there might be some purposes for all this. Pages is like a wiki, and so you can add in notes related to each of the projects and the pages. And the other way of doing all this is also by a thing called sprints, and that basically changes the way that the backlog looks. So if we go back and we go to our backlog, so here now we can put all of our different projects into what's called a sprint, and it's basically what are you working on right now. And you can create multiple sprints, and it's basically just a way of organizing your priorities of what should be worked on at any given time. I kind of did this by setting up these epics by week, and so that way you can kind of do it that way. You can also create sprints, which are the current most high priority items, and then maybe other items. You can create multiple sprints and then add these different documents into each one. I don't know if sprints are the best way of doing it. Sometimes there's great visuals that can help make them look good. But again, I don't really think that it's necessarily the best way of doing it. It just depends on how you want to organize it. So I am going to go back and change it so that way I am not using the sprints, and going back. Backlog looks all good. The board looks normal. So again, lots of different features in here to play around with, but it's very visual based, and the idea is that we're documenting everything into these tasks and trying to hold all of our data there. I mentioned that you can also do searches, and I'm not sure if I actually pulled this up, but you can see these are from different projects that I already created, and some of these are just from the one that we just created right now. So there is a whole tutorial about how to do the searches, but it's pretty straightforward, where you can actually just use the exact name that is a part of this area right here. So if you spell that out exactly like that, I'd also recommend not putting in extra punctuation and other non letters and numbers in the title names. It's just needless and makes it more messy. So I would take out that semicolon. But that is the main portion to this. Another aspect of this that people often like is you can set the different access levels, and with the access levels you can really make it so that way you can have multiple projects going on, but everyone has different access to see what's going on. For example, let me pull this over. So this is just that user that I was talking about. That's not me as the admin. Here are all the projects. Here's the one that we just created. And as you can see, it has a little star here, and all these have stars because this user is able to access it. But I created a different project, and this one is actually does not include this user. So if I click on this, all that pops up is actually nothing, so they can't see anything except for the title of the project. So you do have restrictions. You can even actually hide this to a certain extent. But then anything that you see the star by, that means that person can actually use it. And when we open this up, then we can see that they see the exact same views as what we do. They can sort their different tasks based off, which ones are just theirs. There's other ways of viewing all the different data. So that is the main idea to all this. I can't think of anything else that's really important. There are different ways of creating the projects and slight differences between all of the different projects that we have. Again, you can see the differences over here. Again, you saw how I was able to rename things and the limited number of menus. That is only true for the next gen software. Everything that's classic has a much more involved method, and they've changed it over the years. So it's not always, the online instructions are not always the most detailed. Again, you can add in people, you can add in filters for different views of data that you want to see. You can again create projects. Is typically from right here. Just be consistent, and it's overall a very nice piece of software that really is versatile. And this would work like some of the other pieces of software I've seen the groups at Northwestern use, with the major difference is that this is a little bit easier to handle when it comes to the interface and actually searching through to get the data. Many of the different open source solutions people came up with involved actually using a involved having a programmer come in and modify the different projects. So another thing that can be done is Microsoft Teams can also be used. Not very sure if I have, no, I don't have this set up right here. On my other computer I have it set up. But you can actually see all the different items that are inside a project, all the different tasks. You can actually see this inside Microsoft Teams in a tab at the top. It's a very simple add-in to add in, and you can add in multiple filters, so you can just see the items that are in the prep, and that can be actually one tab at the top of Microsoft Teams, and you can see all the other information. You can create issues and update issues all within Microsoft Teams. Then if you need to do more detailed information add-ins, then you'd actually need to go to this interface to actually make the updates. This also integrates into email, so you can get updates when changes or issues are added. And that can be a little bit annoying, but it does give you a direct link so you can go and see what's happening. So if you're not getting a huge number of events per week, issues added per week, or it's only on a certain day, then it is pretty manageable for that. Otherwise, you need to change some of the settings so that way you don't get overwhelmed with every change and addition, because there's a lot of areas that you can fill out, and if you don't do it all at one time, then it gets a little bit chaotic on how many emails you get. So that is my summary of this. In another tutorial, I will show what Microsoft Teams looks like and how JIRA can be actually added into that. The other different projects that I talked about before, again, everything is customizable, so you can get kind of all the individual parts of all the other projects by just adding and removing different features to your project. And then at the very end, there's a task that involves archiving the whole system, or archiving the project, or the issue. So, again, I would always suggest archiving, with that download, the Word download feature, and your data into, again, a repository. So that way, every 5-10 projects, then you've backed them up. So then 2 years from now, when you decide to go and move on to a different piece of software, you still have everything archived, and you can make the transition. You don't have to try to go back and back up all your data from this system into folders or into alternate systems or migrating it. You can just switch over to your new system, and then you don't have to worry about it. So that is my main suggestion. So again, I can be contacted about additional features and ways of setting this up, but that kind of gives you the broad idea of how this can work. So thank you very much, and I hope this was helpful.